Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of We Are Funded Trading Plus. Today Jamie and I are going to figure out whether we agree, disagree, strongly disagree, etc. on a range of topics.
Risking more than 2% of your capital on a single trade is reckless.
Agree. We're talking about on an investment more, but yeah, if we're talking about a trade, I mean it's a leveraged product. Yeah, I think it. What was an old phrase that Mark Douglas, old traders, you said gunslingers. That was the one. He used to call them gunslingers if people like that as well.
I just don't think it's necessary.
Mm.
I think incrementally building up the balance of an account is such a more sustainable way of doing it. There's no need to risk that degree in a single trade. I mean, we see looking at people are risk more than that. Generally, it's unsuccessful. So for me, I just strongly agree that it's unnecessary and reckless.
Well, it always comes down to sort of how long you want to trade. You want to make all your money in a week, or you want to trade for the next month, a year, 10 years, etc. So I think if you keep that perspective and are a little bit more sensible, then that happens, because you're going to have a few losers in a row. You might have 5, 10 losers in a row. That's not unusual, and you could potentially be down sort of 10, 20% very quickly, which, in order to make that much back, you need to start risking even more, and it just becomes a nightmare. So yeah. I think we're relatively on the same page for that.
Yeah. Well, I just think with my own, if it was my own money, would I do that with my money? Absolutely not. So why would I do it when I'm, using simulated funds?
Yeah, exactly.
At a larger level.
Those who want to stay in the game don't tend to risk more than that.
Prop firms should develop their own proprietary trading platforms rather than relying on third-party software.
Yeah.
I mean, it's down to the firm in question. I think you could gain some benefits from it, but ultimately people want familiarity. If you're a customer of a prop firm and you're having to learn a new platform every time you move around, I think that's probably not something that people want to do. I wouldn't want to do that.
No, stay in your lane.
Yeah, well, you put your skills and energy and expertise into what you know, and that should be creating great products. More evaluations, different rules, different categories of evaluation, rather than trying to stray into something that probably the expertise isn't there. You might just end up with a sea of sub-quality, subpar products.
Yeah, the stuff to do in-house, the stuff to outsource, and the stuff that's debatable, that is one to definitely outsource. It's like, I'm not going to invent a bank just to store our money. It's not quite the same, but same principle. No, leave the experts to develop their software and stay in your lane in that respect, and then just benefit from them having millions of users, full development teams who are just focused on one thing and not trying to manage everything.
Yeah.
Prop firms should only fund traders with proven experience.
Well, I don't even need to move that. Depends what degree of experience we're talking about. I mean, depends how we're defining experience. I mean, there's people who will pass, 5 days for whatever, take a handful of trades, you're still going to give them an account because that's the nature of the business. Now, in a sort of traditional manner, that wouldn't be considered particularly proven, but that's what people want, to be able to get funded relatively quickly. So you provide that service, really. If you're in a big investment bank or hedge fund or something like that, you'd need a longer term track record. So they have to prove themselves according to your rules and standards, but I guess against the traditional yardstick, they don't really have to prove themselves as much.
Well, it's about the idea that actually the way that Funded Trading Plus is set up, it's a level playing field. It's quite sort of
I guess
so it allows people that are perhaps only just getting into trading, that have a lot of experience, but they can work within the rules and parameters that are set on the programs, and they can still see good results. We don't ask anybody to demonstrate their credentials other than, can they pass this evaluation, or can they operate an instant account in a way which is within the parameters that we've set. So you could do that on day one, or you could build up experience. And for us, it's quite democratic in the fact that actually, if you can stay within the parameters set, then you can be successful.
You can miss a lot of talent as well if you're asking people to prove. You might have really talented sort of 18, 20-year-old traders who've not had a chance to build up a track record, and you can miss out on that sort of skills and ability if you just filter them out with some arbitrary sort of timeframes.
Yeah.
Automated trading systems are the future of trading.
I mean, I'm going to place this in a sort of retail context. I'm not talking about algorithms and AI that institutions use. We're talking about like expert advisors and things like that. I mean, it depends. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. I'm going to disagree. I mean, if people just want to buy something off the shelf and then put it in store and think it's going to make magic riches, then that's nonsense. And we've always been well against that. But no, I think it requires to be a human element in the market to take advantage of them.
Well, for me, I just think you can't swim against the tide. So AI is developing all of the time. I think the technology will get to a point where it will be probably a case of an off-the-shelf will be able to do something better than a human will be. And I think when we're looking into the far future, I just think the technology will be there that will change the game entirely.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be disagreement for the markets to move, and humans are flawed and make bad decisions, and they're one of the reasons the markets move. I mean, slightly more complicated than that, but we'll see. But it'll be exciting times. I intuitively think it's people looking for shortcuts and things like that for something to do when that never works.
Transparency in trade performance metrics should be mandatory for all prop firms.
I think it's a very private thing, isn't it? Your own trading performance. I'm not sure exactly what we're projecting everyone's performance and how well they do and things like that. I mean, it depends on what sort of metrics you're talking about. If you're talking about like CFD firms have to do, traditional brokers say how many people lose or win after a quarter, but then that doesn't affect the individual. If you've got a brilliant individual, it's like saying, to professional footballers, 99% of people aren't going to make it out of academies. That doesn't apply to the exceptional people who are going to make it, isn't it? So I don't necessarily think that has a huge bearing on people, and the traders who are successful aren't going to care anyway about anything negative because they're just so determined, so focused, and so determined to be in that 20%, 10%, 5%, whatever the true figure actually is. So I'm not sure it'd make any difference to them.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that at the kind of level of the individual. I think generally, firms can do more to share, and I think we were one of the first firms after September last year coming out with different statistics to support what we do.
Yeah.
I think overall there's probably a culture of secrecy within the industry as a whole, which some firms have done more to combat than others. I think us being a prime example. There are some other firms that I'd put out there. But generally, I think there's a bit of a cloak of secrecy, and allowing clients, customers, users of the platforms to make informed choices is probably helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it was mandatory from sort of like a regulatory context where everyone has to tell the truth, whereas at the moment, if it was done in that way where it's an equal playing field, all firms are disclosing the same information, it's verified and accurate, I think that'd be fair. But at the moment, people just make it up, which isn't ideal.
Yeah, that's it. And I think we do see some things which just sound wild, and when you dig into them even a little bit, they don't stand up to scrutiny. So I think really the message is that be cautious, and if something does sound too good to be true from a firm, perhaps it is. I think we've always tried to be realistic, and I think that's where our strength lies, in that we're transparent in the way that we operate. We don't hide things. We communicate really effectively with people, but ultimately there are firms out there which are, you'd probably consider bad actors in the way that they manipulate things to their advantage.
Yeah.
Final question. Risk management is more important than strategy for successful trading.
My polar opposite views. Yeah, I mean, it's the old thing, isn't it? It's a cliche trading saying, rule one, risk management, rule two, rule one type thing as well, isn't it? So it doesn't matter how good your strategy is if your risk is all over the place, it's gone. But equally, if you haven't got a great strategy but you're managing your risk, you really stay in the game to develop. Like if you're only risking 1% a trade, it's going to take you a long time before your account blows up. In fact, theoretically impossible if you keep reducing it to the 1%. But yeah, no, I'd strongly agree with that.
Yeah, I think I've gone for agree just because of really for the points that you say, in that it takes both. I think if all you're doing is managing risk with no strategy, you're probably unlikely to get where you want to be. You're probably unlikely to pass an evaluation. You'll stay in there for a long time, but you'll be treading water.
Yeah.
So I think it's a blend. I think absolutely risk management is key, but I think you do need to also have an idea of what you're doing when you enter in the market.
Yeah.
Whether you're using simulated funds or your own funds in a broker account, I think approaching that with no strategy is going to lead to disaster.
Yeah. Well, that's it from us on this episode, and thank you for watching We Are Funded Trading Plus.